On this edition of Southern Newsweek, love and hope overtakes fear and anxiety as Dunedin's Islamic community return to their mosque to pray for the first time since Friday's terror attack in Christchurch. Thousands of people flocked to Vigils in the Central Lakes district to pay tribute to those affected by Friday's Christchurch terror attack. And the Dunedin City Council holds an extraordinary meeting to formally express its support, sympathy and condolences to the Muslim community. Kia ora, I'm Melissa Barton. Love and hope overtook fear and anxiety this week as Dunedin's Islamic community returned to their mosque to pray for the first time since Friday's terror attack in Christchurch. Hundreds of members of the public gathered outside Dunedin's Al Huda Mosque in Clyde Street for nearly 3 hours in a show of support for the city's Muslim community.
Construction workers and volunteers digging graves in Christchurch this morning amid a heavy police presence. The scene a chilling reminder of the enormity of Friday's tragedy. Otago University Middle East specialist Professor Bill Harris says it's one of the worst attacks in modern history.
This attack is actually unprecedented, full stop, in terms of an attack in the West on Muslims and mosques.
Dunedin's Muslim community returned to their mosque in Clyde Street yesterday for the first time since Friday's terror attack. Members of the mosque coming to terms with the knowledge the accused identified Dunedin as his initial target before the Christchurch attacks. Professor Harris calling for a national day of mourning to mark the tragedy.
Because it's the right thing to do. I think that's number one. And number two is that we are watched. As never before. I think that's obvious, particularly by the Islamic world.
Hundreds of people gathered in the Octagon for a candlelit vigil on Saturday night, while in Oamaru a short vigil was held at St Luke's Anglican Church before more than 100 people walked down Lower Thames Street in silence on Saturday night. Harris says vigils and memorial services are important, not only for the community but for the perception of the country.
The mainline press has simply taken the attitude that it's the event that's to be condemned and not us. But we are, in a way, on notice and being observed.
A community vigil set to be staged in Mosgiel tonight at Memorial Park, while the Dunedin City Council has confirmed a civic vigil will take place in the Octagon on Thursday night in Dunedin, the South today.
Thousands of people have flocked to Vigils in the Central Lakes district to pay tribute to those affected by Christchurch's terror attack. Locals from Queenstown and Wanaka turned out in force on Monday to show support for their Muslim communities.
A public show of solidarity in Queenstown last night, thousands packing into Earnslaw Park to pay tribute to those affected by Friday's Christchurch terror attack. Many carried candles and flowers, others held signs with messages of support and love. A hush fell over the crowd as members of Queenstown's Muslim community prayed before the service got underway. Queenstown Muslim Community Trustee Muhammad Nadeem says the community has shown their love and support.
At the moment, we really feel secure, and the council, the community down here, they're very nice to us, and I would say, we feel home, we feel safe.
Fellow trustee Ashif Khan says some of his friends and family were among the victims.
There are some victims from Fiji. Actually, I know them personally. One of my nephew is there. He has been admitted at the hospital, which I got a Viber message from one of my friends that he is still admitted and he is needing our prayers that he can recover very well quickly.
Meanwhile, candles shone brightly to remember the victims of Friday's terrorist attack as the sun set over the hills behind Lake Wanaka. Over 1,500 people gathered on the lake's foreshore, sombre in mood but strong in spirit. Wanaka residents Sarah Holmes and Monique Kelly say Friday's attacks were a wake-up call.
I think it's really about calling out even the least of our hatreds that we say against people and making sure, I think this is a time we really need to look at ourselves as a nation and say, hate has no place here, and we need to call it out where it is, when it is, and we need to support our minority communities and make sure that they feel the love.
A vigil planned for Thursday night in Dunedin is now set to take place at Forsyth Bar Stadium to accommodate the large numbers of people expected to attend in central Otago, the South today.
The Dunedin City Council held an extraordinary meeting on Tuesday to formally express its support, sympathy and condolences to the Muslim community in the wake of last week's terrorist attack in Christchurch. At the start of the week, Mayor Dave Cole called the meeting as a platform for elected representatives to share their feelings.
Tears flowed as councillors paid tribute to the city's Muslim community this afternoon at a special meeting of the Dunedin City Council. Mayor Cull led councillors expressing their horror at the outrageous atrocity which took place in Christchurch on Friday.
Nevertheless, we are stricken to the core by this horror, and we stand with you in solidarity and araha.
Councillors' voices cracking with emotion as they commit to supporting the Muslim community in Dunedin and around the country and making changes necessary to tackle casual racism in society, no matter how small.
And I've made a personal commitment, and I would encourage you all to do the same, that we call this out when it happens. It's the small gestures also that will make the difference. The warm smile to a woman in the supermarket who's wearing a hijab.
The meeting began with a prayer and a waiata and ended with councillors voting unanimously for a resolution supporting their views. Local Muslim Paul Gawley stood shoulder to shoulder with a sister in faith and the Reverend who'd opened proceedings, and Gawley's message is simple: love must conquer hate.
It's the same in Islam. We don't want this to grow into something, and if we join his hatred, if we join that, which wasn't really even about the man, it's the evilness, if we join in that by being full of hate, then what we've done is we've given up, we've given in, we've lost the path.
Councillors sang the national anthem to conclude the meeting. In Dunedin, the South Today.
The Highlanders rugby team have paid tribute to the victims in the Christchurch terror attacks. The squad missed Dunedin's Vigils as they flew out to Auckland for their Super Rugby match against the Blues, but took some time before departing to show their support to the local Muslim community.
An emotional gathering outside Dunedin's mosque today. Members of the Highlanders rugby team embracing local Muslims, a show of solidarity with the community in the wake of last week's atrocities.
Our boys won't be able to be at the vigil this evening because we're travelling obviously, so this was a perfect time and an opportunity for us.
Clark and head coach Aaron Major placed a wreath at the entrance of the mosque. There was silence to remember the victims and the presentation of a Highlanders jersey with a special message.
In loving memory of the lives lost at the Masjid Al-Nur Mosque, Linwood Islamic Centre, 15th March 2019, you are us.
The local Muslim community overwhelmed with the support they're receiving.
Thank you, and we really appreciate it. We just don't have enough words to thank and show our appreciation as well, but we really do appreciate it.
The Highlanders' appearance at the mosque today impressing the younger generation as well.
But I just think that they got extra players because I don't think that that's only one team. That looked like it's about 5 teams or something.
Just the one out in force, doing their bit to help bridge a social divide. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern News Week, a school project developed after the Christchurch terror attacks is embraced by other schools throughout Australasia. And Dunedin's multi-million-dollar bus hub opens for business. Welcome back. A paper chain project which started at St Margaret's College in Christchurch has been taken up by other schools in New Zealand and Australia. The paper chain project comes in the wake of last week's terrorist attack in Christchurch, with the inventors of the idea hoping to show we're all connected.
We have the paper chains that the students of St Margaret's College have created, and they've got messages of love on them. We felt that the actions of the person, he tried to tear our city down like it was paper, but what he didn't realise was that we're all interlinked and we're strong like these chains, and I guess that's what these chains symbolise. Although there was so much ugly that happened on Friday, I think that we also did see a lot of humanity. I saw so much love being shared around and people supporting each other, and that's what Christchurch is about, that's what New Zealand is about. Yeah, and that's, I guess, what we wanted to send out to people of New Zealand and Christchurch, is that we're all about love and we're all here to support one another. Just reading a few here, there's lots saying Kia kaha Christchurch, or they are us. All we are saying is give peace a chance. Kind of stemmed from the idea that all of us in Christchurch are all interlinked, and although some of us are from different backgrounds or believe in different religions, we are all human and we all kind of support one another. Initially the movement was just for our school, but as the prefect team and I kind of discussed, we thought that it'd be good to challenge other schools to take on the kind of love that we're trying to voice, I guess. Never let anyone dull your sparkle. We, as such young people in our community, were shocked at all the events that happened. And I guess most of us felt really lost as to what we could do, because in times of such hardship or adversity, we all feel kind of powerless. But just, I guess this movement's about knowing that every small action can lead to something gigantic when we all work together and collaborate as a community.
World Hijab Day is traditionally held on February the 1st, but an event was held this week following the tragedy in Christchurch. The Muslim Students Association at the University of Otago hosted a hijab day encouraging non-Muslim women to wear the religion's traditional headscarf.
Waiting to wear a hijab. By 11 a.m, the Muslim Students Association had run out of headscarves needed for non-Muslim women to take part in Hijab Day, an event which was organised following the tragedies in Christchurch for people to show solidarity with the Muslim community. Otago University Public Health student Sophie Barham was among many southern women who chose to wear the Muslim woman's hijab.
School children and uni students who wear hijabs are scared to leave their house because of how they might be seen and the discrimination that they may face. So I think this is a really good way to normalise wearing a hijab and to show our support and solidarity.
Adiba Khan says regrettably she wasn't surprised by the events of last Friday in Christchurch.
One thing that I can't say is that I'm shocked that it happened, because all of us at some point in our lives we've faced discrimination, whether it be casual or to our face because we wear a hijab in New Zealand.
Shakiba and Adiba say there are a handful of reasons why Muslim women wear the hijab.
And hijabs are a sign of...
Well, hijab's the reason why we wear it. It's, first of all, just to, protect ourselves, basically. That's one of the main reasons why we wear it. And also it's to prevent the opposite sex, which are the males, to not think badly.
It's to be modest.
Yes.
In Islam, modesty is such a big thing.
Sophie Barham says she was initially uncomfortable about wearing the faith-based headgear from a culture that isn't her own.
I was a bit nervous about it at first, about it being culturally inappropriate, cultural appropriation and stuff. But I think after talking to Adiba, you can see that it's done by the Muslim Association. It's about showing solidarity.
Adiba Khan says people coming together like this shows we're all one nation, we're all one people, and we're all human. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Dunedin's multi-million-dollar bus hub opened for business this week. Multi-agency officials and dignitaries attended the opening, with Dunedin Mayor Dave Cole arriving by bus.
The first bus arriving at Dunedin's new hub. Dignitaries and guests chauffeur-driven to the launch of the multi-million-dollar development today. The original budget for the project was $4.4 million, but the cost ballooned by $900,000 after the discovery of some issues mid-project.
So ground conditions have been a bit challenging and there's been some extra time and extra costs, but the work on this capital item, the bus hub, is funded out of our transport reserve, so it doesn't have a direct impact on rates.
ORC Chairman Stephen Woodhead says it'll be fully operational in the next week or so, with bus operators gradually introducing services to the hub.
And so more and more services will start running through here over the next few days. And yes, all services that are run to the centre of the city will come through the bus hub.
37 car parks were lost to the project, but Mayor Dave Cull says locals just have to adapt, and Dunedin people can expect more road cones around the city for a few years to come.
Oh, we are. I mean, we've got the hospital rebuild right over there. We've got major works in the George Street that the council's investing in. We've got major works in the tertiary sector area. So things are going to go on for a while. There's a lot of change, but it's very positive change.
Consultation on the project began in late 2016 and it was given the green light in 2017. The Mayor says the hub is a necessary change for the city and is for the greater good.
Oh, this is a great addition to the public transport infrastructure. It brings people together. When they get off a bus, they can get onto the next bus here instead of having to walk a block or two.
The project was funded by the Connect Dunedin Partnership, a group made up of the Dunedin City Council, New Zealand Transport Agency and Otago Regional Council. In Dunedin, the South Today.
In other news, pupils from many schools and main centres around the Otago region took part in a global march for climate change last week. Thousands of Dunedin school pupils are calling for action to stop climate change before it's too late.
Climate change now. Just one of the chants from more than 1,000 protesters as they marched down Dunedin's George Street as part of the Strike for Climate Change event. The protesters escorted by police as the crowd made its way to the destination of the Octagon. Thousands of Kiwi pupils swapping pens for placards today, marching the streets for environmental action. The event is aimed at secondary school pupils, but children from primary schools also travelled to be at today's event, including these youngsters from Waitati School.
Pollution is something bad that humans cause, and if we can put it down, it should help these animals survive.
In 12 years, if we do not reduce our carbon output by at least 50%, we'll have irreversible damage done to our planet.
And my children are quite scared about the future, in particular ability to swim in the ocean. They're concerned about animals, they're concerned about climate change.
Protests took place around Aotearoa, with events planned across the globe. Pupils from intermediate schools also joining their counterparts.
Start acting now, because if we act now, then we'll have a future. I'm Coco and I'm here because climate change is a really bad issue that needs to be stopped.
Today's protest also piqued the interest of tourists, including Larry Blake, a retired chemical engineer for a major oil company in Texas. He says it's great to see younger people out taking environmental action.
Is that I've done that somewhat at the expense of others. And so what I've had to do, and that we donate back to the university and try to do things to get other people to be engineers, to find other ways that we can have energy.
The Strike for Climate Change global movement began last year when 16-year-old Greta Thunberg walked out of class to raise the issue of climate change. That issue replicated by thousands across New Zealand today. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, an actor best known for his role in the Doctor Who TV series makes a special guest appearance at a Dunedin expo. And the ID Dunedin fashion show goes ahead despite the Christchurch terror attacks, so stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. If you hate seeing the Doctor, perhaps you should consider seeing Mark Strickson instead. The TV producer and actor best known for his role as Visla Turlough in Doctor Who was a special guest at a pop culture expo. The charity event was held at the Edgar Centre, raising funds for Heart Kids Otago.
Many years ago I was in a television series called Doctor Who, and people would always ask, when you went into Doctor Who, did you think you were entering a sort of something that would be there forever? Well, it was about 40 years ago for me, and I'm still doing conventions across the world. I'm doing one in Dunedin this weekend. I tend not to do them at home. I tend to try and keep a low profile in Dunedin. The next question people ask is, how did you get into Doctor Who? Well, I trained at the Royal Academy at RADA in London as an actor. The guy who was the lead in Angels became very ill, and they wrote me in, and I was called into the office saying, "Oh, congratulations, Mark, we've written you in as the lead on Angels." I actually didn't want to spend the rest of my life playing a Brummie ambulanceman. So I asked my agent, was I up for anything else? And she said, "Oh, you're up for a part in Doctor Who, but they're not seeing people for a couple of months." So I took it into my own hands. I found out who the producer was. I went and knocked on his door in the BBC, because of course I had a BBC card from being in this soap opera. And I said to him, you don't know me, but I'm up for a part in Doctor Who. Would you mind if I auditioned? So he said, oh, come in. You might as well read for it. I read for it, and as they say, the rest is history. I got the part. So my Doctor in Doctor Who was Peter Davison, who people will also know from, he just starred in All Creatures Great and Small. And this was a clever ploy by the producer of Doctor Who. So they brought in Peter from All Creatures Great and Small. They brought me in from a soap opera, and they were trying to attract other audiences, grow the audience to Doctor Who. I mean, amazingly, there were very few television channels in those days in the UK. I think there were 5, maybe 4. BBC1, BBC2, ITV and Channel 4. And we were on weekday nights at 7:30. Talk about prime time. So we were getting 12 to 13 million viewers. So that was another thing. You were recognised in the street all the time. I played a rather nasty character in Doctor Who when I came into it. I was trying to kill the Doctor. And children would run screaming from me in the supermarket. I was a horrible man. And they dyed my hair this bright copper red. And I was told it would wash out. It made me instantly recognisable. Of course, it didn't wash out at all. I ended up having copper red pillows for the next 2 years of my life. And I lived on a boat at the time, on the canals. I'd cycle across on my bike back from the BBC to my boat, and children were screaming, "Hello, Turlo! There you go! Hello, Turlo!" And it was impossible. It was, anonymity went out the door. And amazingly, people still do recognise me. I think it's amazing, because amazingly, I've changed somewhat in the last 30 years. I was an actor in the UK for 10 years, and I did all sorts of things. I went back into the theatre. I did a film of A Christmas Carol, starred George C. Scott as Scrooge. I was the young Scrooge. I did lots. I was a sort of part of the BBC repertory company almost. But I just felt that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life working in London for the BBC. My wife at the time, an actress called Julie Brennan, was in Emmerdale Farm, and we both decided we just wanted to do something different, so we decided we'd go to Australia. Having never been to Australia, so we went to Australia. She is now a doctor of anthropology at the University of New England in Australia. I did a zoology degree, and I went on to make natural history films. There hadn't been that many documentaries made about Australia at that time. So I really hit a gold vein of programming. One of the first films that I helped write was called The 10 Deadliest Snakes in the World, and we went to look for a presenter. So I wrote off to zoos, animal parks, universities, saying, have you got somebody who's a good talker and who's a fantastic snake handler? And a lady called Terry Irwin sent a video in of her husband and her going to look for death adders in a gorge called Carnarvon Gorge. She almost got bitten. It was complete mayhem, but it was very entertaining. And there were 4 of us who were making the decisions on this film, and we sat and we watched it, and we thought, this man, Steve Irwin, is either going to be a complete and utter disaster or an absolute star. And he proved to be an absolute star. I directed his first 2 films, went on to produce his first 11 films, then I went on to do other things. Doctor Who has been an amazing part of my life. I never thought it would be. I did my first convention in Chicago when I was actually in the programme, and I think 3,500 people turned up. And we had security guards, and it was absolute madness. It was like being a pop star. We were ferried around in stretch limos. It was completely ridiculous. English actors aren't treated like that. We're expected to arrive on the bus usually. It's only American film stars who get stretch limos. And since then, I don't do as many conventions as some other people because I have a proper job. I'm a TV producer. You've got to concentrate on one thing. But this year I'm doing 1 in America, 1 in Germany, and 1 in Dunedin. And I'll probably do a couple in the UK. But it is quite extraordinary, and you get to meet the guys from Star Wars, Star Trek, all these sorts of things. And then we do bigger conventions, which are pop culture, which is anime, even things like Only Fools and Horses comedy shows, Dad's Army, and things like that. And it's just a huge business all across the world. So what do? You turn up, you sign autographs, you talk about your work as an actor. I also talk about my work as a TV producer, because I've almost been killed by animals several times, so it's quite funny. I can teach you what to do if you're being attacked by a crocodile. I'm not going to tell you now, you'll have to come to the convention. You may need it though.
The ID Dunedin fashion show supplied some colour on Friday, with the Christchurch terror attack casting a pall over proceedings. But the show celebrated its 20th anniversary in style, highlighting colour in a time of darkness.
Justifying her unusual clothing designs before a panel of judges, Rebecca Carrington, a graduate from Manchester Metropolitan University, defending her fashion choices to the ID International Emerging Designer Show judges. Former Dunedin-based designer Tanya Carlson says this year's creations seem to reflect the personal issues of each designer.
The last few years we've seen lots about trends, gender, fluidity, binary, etc. This year it's very inward looking, and they're very nostalgic about their childhoods in terms of reference, immigration, migration, troubles at home. They're very inward looking.
Carlson says many of the designs on offer use unique blends of colours and fabrics.
I think one of the things that has really impressed all of us is the really unusual sense of colour that lots of them are using. Quite unexpected, fresh colour palettes, interesting juxtapositions of different fabrics, and beautifully made clothing.
And of course, no fashion show's complete without some weird items of clothing you probably wouldn't see every day.
There's always going to be an element of outrageousness in young design. I think they're going to see a vast majority of brilliant young talent.
An award ceremony for the winning International Emerging Designers is set to be part of this year's ID Dunedin show at the Regent Theatre tonight and again tomorrow. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Authors of beloved books such as The Book Thief and The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas are Dunedin bound for a celebration of literature. The program for this year's Dunedin Writers and Readers Festival has been launched, to be held in the city in May.
The name on the official wine of the Dunedin Readers and Writers Festival, not something you'd imagine this year's guests are overly familiar with. More than 60 writers are heading to Dunedin in May for the biennial festival, officially launched in the city this week.
You can't really be a city for literature without putting on a cracking good festival, and we know this is a community that loves to nurture writing talent, and so we also want to bring writing talent in and mix it with our own.
Included in the lineup are Ireland's John Boyne, author of The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, and Australian writer Marcus Zusak, author of The Book Thief. Finlayson says the 8 international acts they've attracted this year is the most ever, all chosen on the strength of their work, not on a central theme.
What I worry about with a theme is that if you then have to feel like you've got to artificially fill that theme, then does that compromise the quality of what you chase? So I just love having an open book and just going after the people that I think would make a great kind of mix.
There's also plenty of local writers taking part. Finlayson confident they've catered for most tastes and ages.
It's great to see kids in the audience just, meeting authors and illustrators for the first time and getting that kind of real sense of how books can really grow their worlds, and so that's one of the exciting things too.
All that's left now is for locals to snap up tickets for the various events over the 4-day festival.
Bless Dunedinites, but they, we're so good at buying last minute, so I'm really hoping everyone just sort of rushes to the ticket counter and books ahead of time.
The festival runs from the 9th to the 12th of May in Dunedin, the South Today.
That's all for this edition of Southern News Week. For the latest news from the Southern region, head online to odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. In the wake of recent events, remember to be kind to each other. Thanks for joining us. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.